Welcome back. I'm Gila Ross, author of Living Beautifully and host of the Power podcast, where we share short, relatable ideas to impact and upgrade your everyday life. Okay, welcome everyone. Tonight, we're going to look at principles number 10 and 11. So does anyone want to read 10 and 11, please?
Principle 10, I believe with perfect faith that the Creator knows all the deeds and all the thoughts of every human being, as it is written. He has fashioned every heart. He pays attention to all their deeds. Principle 11, I believe with perfect faith that the Creator rewards those who keep his commandments and punishes those who violate his commandments.
Thank you.
Well, it honestly, to me, it sounds a little scary because I don't keep all the commandments.
I was thinking the same thing.
Me neither.
I'm like, oh, really? Seriously?
Yes, I'm serious. There are 613 commandments that are going to a lot. God expects a lot from us, right? For example, you're not allowed to speak bad about other people. You're not allowed to bear a grudge. You're not allowed to take revenge. You're not allowed to hurt other people with words. I'm just thinking of
No envy.
you're not allowed to be jealous of other people.
Well, related to kind of what you said, basically, a lot of words I hear says, God meets you where you're at. So like, he's not going to judge the person that grew up in an observant home, keeping all the mitzvot from when they were born, to someone that grew up in a non-observant home, and they're not expected to keep all 613 or whatever right away.
You can't keep 613 in modern day.
Yeah, no.
Isn't there only like 300 or something that you can keep?
It's much less than that.
Good.
The daily mitzvot that there are, I think I might be wrong, but I think there's like something like 28 that apply on like a day basis. So there's much fewer than that. Yeah. Because the 613 is like some, for example, were only when we had a temple, and some are only for the Kohen, the priests, right? Some are only for men, some are only for women.
When you're grieving.
Yeah. So there's much fewer of the daily ones that there are. I think the first thing that we have to realize when we read this principle is that it should give us a boost of self-confidence. Why? Because when you see an ant, do you care about what the ant is doing?
I got a code.
Unless it's bothering me.
Okay, unless it's bothering you, no. Most of us don't care. Right? We're not going to stop and think, oh, the ant is doing X, Y, Z, or the ant is thinking such and such. We get on with our day unless they're bothering us, right? Mm-hmm. Now, to God, we are like ants, right? Because there's, billions of people in the world, and whatever, we're tiny compared to God. And yet God cares about not just our behaviors, but also our thoughts, right? That means that we're all important. Right? There is no such thing as someone being unimportant, because God cares about not only what we do, but also what we think. Okay, let me ask you a question. We've already established in the earlier principles belief that God continuously creates the world. Now, if God continuously creates the world, then why do we need this? Then obviously God knows what's happening and knows the thoughts and actions of human beings. So why do we need this principle? What is this principle coming to teach us over and above the principle that already taught us that God continuously creates the world?
Just because he creates it doesn't mean he's creating our thoughts. Don't we have control over our thoughts? So that's not the same thing.
Okay.
No, but it doesn't say that he's creating our thoughts. It says he knows the thoughts. Yeah. I mean, to me, I just think it's like an affirmation of, that even though God is infinite, that God is also like personal and with us, even when we don't realize it.
Beautiful. And I think what it also comes to show us here is the emphasis is not just on our behavior, but it's also on our thoughts, because what we think is important as well. It's not enough, for example, for a person just to do good and have unhelpful thoughts, let's call it that, right? But what we think makes a massive difference as well. And imagine there was a machine that could broadcast our thoughts. How many of you are willing to sign up to have your thoughts being broadcast?
No way.
No takers, no takers, no. Come on, just for an hour. No, no, right? It should give us pause for thought, right? That our thoughts are also being, God also knows our thoughts, but it also it works for our advantage as well, because that means if God knows our thoughts, it means that God knows who we really want to be, right? God knows our highest aspirations, right? God knows how much we try. He cares about us and he knows our true goodness. Right? And at the same time, it gives us pause because we're responsible for what we do and think. Any thoughts, any questions on that? So let's move on and read the rest of the principle, okay? Because it says he has fashioned every heart. Right? What does it mean he has fashioned every heart? It's bringing a proof that God knows what all our deeds and our thoughts are. So why does it say he's fashioned every heart? He pays attention to all their details. Why doesn't it say he creates our heart or he knows our heart? Why does it say he fashioned our heart? It's not just that he knows, but he's created that heart, right? Think about it. God could have created the world anyway. We live in a world of falsehood. We live in a world where there's so many negative influences, especially when we're talking about our thoughts as well, right? So he created us that way. And he created us in this world where there's so many negative influences. How is it fair that we're held accountable for our thoughts? Has anyone ever had the experience where you've had like a thought that sort of popped into your head? Yes, all the time, right? How is it fair that we're held accountable for those thoughts?
Sometimes those thoughts are good thoughts. I mean, sometimes those thoughts
Yes.
are inspirational.
But I mean, the question's still the same. Like if it just pops into our head, why should we be held responsible for it, whether it's for the good or for the bad?
Maybe it's how we handle it.
Okay,
Well,
so you're saying we're not.
We can't help the thoughts because we are human, but how do we handle our thoughts?
Beautiful. Nina, were you going to say something?
I was gonna say, who else would be responsible for our thoughts if we're not responsible for our own thoughts?
It's a good question, but if a thought comes into our mind, right? Like, I don't know, you see something, you hear something, and then you have a thought about it, right? Like, is it really fair to be held accountable for that? And what we're taught is that we're not responsible. We're not responsible for that first thought that came into our mind, right? But what we are responsible for it is if we cultivate it. And there's 3 ways we can cultivate a thought, right? One is by talking about it. One is by meditating on them, thinking of it on it again and again and again. And the other is by acting on it. So there's 3 ways that we kind of can take a thought, an initial thought, which we're not responsible for, but we then choose what we do with it. We choose to either cultivate it or we choose to kind of ignore it, right? Or challenge it or question it or whatever. But only if we cultivate it by meditating on it, by verbalizing it, or by acting upon it, or then are we responsible for it. Okay. Now, this question, I think God could have created the world anyway. Why? Like any way he wanted. Why did he create the world in a way where we are challenged by negative influences and we are challenged by negative thoughts that we then have to challenge and counteract and not cultivate? Yes.
Because it's part of our free choice. If everything was always positive, then it would be like there would only be one choice if everything was good.
We're not in this world to like have a joyride, but we're in this world to like grow and to become the best person we could be. So any challenge like that is going to have hardships to it.
You also can't see the good if you don't go through the bad.
Well, that's true too.
Right? If everything is always pleasant,
You may not appreciate it.
Totally, yeah.
And you can't grow. So it's kind of
Right.
like they say, working out at the gym, you're not gonna be able to build muscle if you don't have resistance.
No pain, no gain.
So you have to build your spiritual muscle.
Yeah. So in Hebrew, there's a word called tikkun, right? which the tikkun is something that we have to fix, we have to repair. Every thought that God sends us is a tikkun. It's something that we have to work on and we have to fix and we have to repair, right? Obviously, we're talking about the negative thoughts here. We're not talking necessarily about the positive thoughts. The positive thoughts are there to help us as well. Now, the thing about a tikkun is that it's personally designed for us, right? And it might be something that we struggle with our whole life, right? A person may have negative, for example, self-talk that they struggle with their entire life, right? That's their tikkun. That is something that God has given them. That is a challenge. And in Hebrew, the word for nature is teva, right? The nature of a person, the nature of the world is teva. And it's related to a word called tviyah, which is like sunk in, right? Which is, for example, when someone makes jewelry, how do they make jewelry? The first step to making jewelry is they make a mold of whatever the design is that they want to design, right? Now, someone who knows what jewelry is going to look like can look at the mold and know what the final product is going to look like, right? And the deeper the mold, the more precious the piece of jewelry is going to be. It's the same thing is that we, through overcoming our deficiencies, is how we become great, right? And that's how we come to know our ideal self. And if we want to know what our potential greatness is, we look at what our negative characteristics are, because those are our potential greatness, right? Someone who has this, who's not patient, for example, right, by nature, I'm not calling anyone out here, right?
I self-identify.
Right? Someone who by nature is an impatient person, right? That is a tikkun that God has given them, that they have to work on it, and they're put in this world to correct that, to correct our deficiencies. And how great can a person become? Infinite greatness, and it depends on the deficiencies. Depends on how someone who's born with patience and is patient, is that a great thing?
No, because they didn't have to work for
No.
it.
It's very nice, but it's not a greatness of theirs,
Kind
right?
of like what Marla was saying, is like you're not judged the same equally, you're judged
Right.
where you are to where you could become great.
Imagine this, and I may have used this analogy before, so apologies if I have, but imagine, someone gives you a machine which can take gold and turn it into diamonds. Would you want to invest in that machine?
I don't know, which is more valuable, gold or
Diamonds. Diamonds is more valuable than gold.
Yes.
Now, what about if you had a machine that was able to take silver and turn it into diamonds? Would you want to invest in a machine like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're in, right? What about if you have a machine that's able to take garbage and turn it into diamonds?
Definitely.
Definitely, even if it's expensive,
Yeah.
and even if the process is not so pleasant, it's uncomfortable.
Mhm.
I mean, no one wants to work with trash, right? So, but you're still in because the end product is worth it, right? That's what life is. God has given us this machine where God gives us
That was a good one.
garbage to deal with in our life, right? Deficiencies, difficulties, all these different things. And what is it? Is by us going through those things, we turn them into eternal diamonds. Is the process fun or easy? No, it can be really uncomfortable and it can take a long time. It could take 7, 8 years, it could take 70, 80 years to take a character trait that a person has and turn it into a more pleasant one. Yeah.
I was just thinking, I was thinking of myself and how I did that over the past year, but I was also thinking about so many different people, like somebody that loses a child to, I don't know, a murder or something. Then you read about them, they go on and create organizations for parents that lost a child to murder. Those are the ones you hear about, but people go from the depth of sorrow and pain to the other side of giving so much to others. An alcoholic that's been sober for 30 years sponsors other alcoholics.
Yeah. Yeah. And doing something like that takes tremendous, tremendous, tremendous work. Now, is it, and I think it's important to know this, right? Is it the alcoholic's fault that he was born or with
that tendency,
tendencies?
no.
No, right? So I think almost everyone has been born into a situation that's not their fault, right? People struggle with all sorts of things. People struggle with depression. People struggle with negative self-talk, with
Relationships.
relationships, with financial stuff, right? Infertility, all sorts of things people struggle with, right? And it's not their fault. And at the same time, we still have the responsibility to work through it. I think it's very important to hold those two truths in our hands at the same time, right? Is it my fault that I'm struggling with X, Y, Z? Usually it's not, right? Okay, if someone stands in the middle of the road and gets hit by a car, then the answer might be different, right? Again, but I'm just throwing out, sometimes we suffer because of the bad choices that we've made, and in which case we have to take responsibility and learn from it. But so often we're struggling with things that are not our fault, and we have the responsibility to work through those problems. Now, what does success look like? What is success? How do we define success?
Like trying to do something even though it's hard.
So trying, okay. Anyone else wants to weigh in? How do you define success? You guys want to know how Judaism defines success?
Yeah.
Sure.
So you know how Judaism defines success is by keep on trying. You can fail as much as you want, but you can't quit.
Interesting.
As long as you keep on trying, it's because if you think about it, right, success is not necessarily having the problem vanish. Let's say someone is struggling with depression, for example, right? So the God gives them depression and they're struggling with it. Success doesn't necessarily mean that they're not depressed anymore. It means that they constantly struggle with it, right? It doesn't mean that the problem vanishes. It means that they are continually putting effort in to do better, to struggle with whatever it is that they've been given, right? Someone struggles with relationships. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden the relationship is, after a certain amount of time, the relationship is great. I mean, hopefully it is.
But you're
it means that they're constantly trying to get better.
If you have a tikkun, meaning a personality or character struggle or like a mental health struggle, that's not the same as saying, I'm trying to be successful in my career. Maybe you're not supposed to be successful in that specific career and you need to change your career path. So that's why you have to distinguish when you say success, what area are you really supposed to keep struggling versus another, meaning, no, you need to change direction.
So, yeah. I think that's
Yeah, I mean, yes, you're raising a good point, and I want to say something that I think might sound a little bit controversial, but I don't think Judaism cares about career, right?
You don't think what?
Judaism cares about success in career, right? We're in this world.
Though I did learn that if you have a talent, you should bring that to fruition.
Yes.
So in that sense, I
100%.
think
Yes, but it doesn't have to be. Some people bring their talent to fruition. That helps as well, right?
mine.
Yes, I wonder why, right? To fruition, and it's not through what they do for their work, right? But and I say that I'm saying that this emphasis on having a successful career is not a Torah concept, right? Torah cares about who we are as people, how we develop ourselves, how we maximize our individuality, how we treat other people, how our relationship with God is, our relationship with ourselves is, all that sort of things is success. Career is, where does Judaism care about it? Are you honest in business, right? Are you treat other people well? Like that sort of thing is important, is much more important
Do you
than
pay your employees on time?
yes, all those laws that Judaism has about that in the business arena, but there's not much of an emphasis on thou shalt make a lot of money, right? As being a definer of who we are as a successful person. There's good to the drive and everything, but it's also important to know that this idea of success is a dollar amount is not true. It's not even just not a Torah concept, it's not even true, right? Who would you rather have as a friend? Someone who is makes a lot of money and is dishonest, or someone who makes less money and is honest, right? We all would rather have the person who's honest, or the person who's loyal, or who's kind, or whatever. Again, which doesn't mean that people that make a lot of money aren't all those things. I'm just
Right.
using it as an example to kind of show the difference between it.
But at the same time.
Yes.
Well, related to using your talents, so like, if you have the potential to make more money, because then you could then use that money to do a
Yes.
lot of positive things, like give a lot of charity or found a organization or whatever, versus underutilizing your potential, like this, because they say, but on Rosh Hashanah every year, they say God decides how much money everyone's gonna make and things like that. So then you wonder, are you utilizing your potential, whatever work you're doing? Are you, because they say you're supposed to work. You're not supposed to just sit and learn Torah all day. You're actually supposed to work and, balance that with providing for your family. Well, how much are you supposed to provide? It depends on a lot of things.
And realize also that money is a big temptation. Money is a challenge as well. Especially in society we live in, there's a lot of social status that's put together with having a lot of money, and there's a lot of challenges that come with having a lot of money, right? Especially on the
And with
spiritual-
having not enough money.
and having not enough, right? So it's a complicated one, and there's nothing wrong with having money as long as a person recognizes that money is just a means to doing good in this world, right?
But the money that's given really is given from God anyways. Like,
Yeah. And
It's
that's
not, it's not our money, it's whether we get a lot, whether we get a little, I swear lifetime I'm gonna have a ton. But you never know, but that's how I think about it, right? It's not ours.
it's not ours.
And I sometimes think people forget that.
Yeah. And that's what I meant. That's part of what I meant when I said like money is a challenge, because when a person has a lot of money, it's a challenge to remember that money is a gift from God,
Oh,
right?
Also, it's a challenge to not feel better than others who don't have as much.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's not me, I just.
Everyone.
It's very true. It's
Yeah.
very true.
Yeah. There's challenges to everything in life. Yeah, there's challenges. And I think, again, to kind of summarize what we've said so far is that we live in a world of separation, right? We live in a world of separation from God. And our job in this world is to bridge that gap, right? And the greater the distance, the greater the impact of the reunion. Right, just think about it. I'm thinking about it now. My daughter's in Israel for the year, right? So she comes back in June, please God. It's going to be a much greater reunion than when my son, who's living in the West Side, comes home for Pesach, right? Because she's been away for 9 months, right?
Sure.
Like the greater the distance, the greater the impact of the reunion. And it's the same thing is like those deficiencies that Hashem has given us are a distance. And when we can overcome that distance, we make a very powerful reunion. And the bigger the distance, the bigger the challenge, the greater the impact. And again, it's important to recognize that the separation may very well be God's doing, right? God may have created the separation. But the closeness, the ultimate closeness that we choose to have with God depends on us. And it doesn't matter if it takes a long time, right? I think, again, another misconception is that it's supposed to be, okay, I learned something and now great, I'm close and I've done it all. No, God gives us a lifetime to work on things, right? This machine that God has given us, which is life, where we take our deficiencies and we turn them into closeness and into eternal diamonds, is a process that God gives us a whole lifetime to work on. Okay, so the 11th principle follows on quite naturally, right? That I believe with perfect faith that the Creator rewards those who keep His commandments and punishes those who violate His commandments, right? Why did God create us? Nice, easy question to finish the class off. Why did God create us?
To have a relationship with us and elevate the physical to the spiritual.
Yes, and more than that. God created us to give us rewards, right? That's why God created us in a world where we have free choice. so we can choose to do good, and as a result of that, earn the reward that God is, the ultimate good that God is going to give, which is, because no one likes a handout. Right? I mean, we do kind of like a handout, but no one wants to live on handouts, right? No one wants to feel like they're a charity case, right? We want to feel like we earned it, we deserve, I'm getting what I deserve, right? When it's the good things, right? So God created us to give us rewards. And sometimes, for the sake of the rewards, discipline is necessary. What do I mean by that? What we have to understand is that the punishment that it's talking about is a corrective measure that is designed to help us improve, right? For example, sometimes your garage is cluttered and you leave your car out in the winter and it snows overnight. What do you learn as a result of leaving your car and having the car and the car snowed on? You clean out your garage, right? You know what you do pretty fast the next time, before the next time that the snow is forecast? You clean out your garage so you can park your car in, right? So the bad that happened, and I know I'm giving a silly example here, right? The bad that happened, which was the snow falling on the car, was an impetus for us to choose good. Right, so it's the same thing as pain or hunger, right? That someone feels. The pain or the hunger is there to signal that something needs attention, right? So that's where the punishment is, and I think it's important also for us to understand that not every bad thing that happens to a person is a punishment. Right, we spoke before about people that use challenges that have, and they do something good with it. There's 8 different reasons why bad things happen to good people. Punishment is only one of them, right? And punishment, again, even the punishment is a corrective measure, and we're told in the Talmud that in a place where a Baal Tshuva stands, a Baal Tshuva is someone who done something wrong and returned, right? Returned from what they did wrong, right? Even a completely righteous person can't stand, right? Which means that in God's eyes, someone who messed up and repaired that mess up, that mistake, is on a higher level than someone who is completely righteous. Why do you think that might be? Why would that be?
Because, well, like you said before, that God just wants us to keep trying. So the emphasis isn't on what we did not good. The emphasis is that we tried hard enough that we could get to a better place.
Beautiful.
Dad always used to say, anything that happens is only for the good in the long run. I don't know if that's true or not, but that was his viewpoint, was like, even if it's terrible and it's hard and it sucks but it's for your good in the long run.
And something good can come out of it,
Right.
right? Something we have the choice of whether we can use it to do something good.
I guess that's what he means, right?
Yeah,
Like,
but
losing a child is not good, right? But what do we do with that pain and suffering?
Yeah, we have a choice of what we do with that. Were you going to say
Yeah.
something, Cheryl? Yeah.
So when you compare Baal Tshuva to the person that didn't have to go through anything, then that person is going to actually have more chesed and more understanding because of what they went through.
More
Very
humility
true.
as well. That's
Right.
true. It's a good point. It's a very good point. It's kind of like a hose, right? If you think about a hose, if you want to direct the water from a hose far, you have to have 2 things. You have to have high water pressure, but you also have to have a nozzle that limits what's coming out. Because if you just have the high water pressure and just an opening, it won't go very far. But if you have those 2 things, the high water pressure and the nozzle that limits it, it goes very far. Because oftentimes the person who becomes a Baal Tshuva, right, someone who repairs what they've done wrong, it's because of the adversity that they face. It's because of what they did that they learn from it, and they learn the humility, or they learn the kindness, or they learn the understanding, or they have a greater appreciation for good, or whatever it is. But because of that, they go far further in place than someone who hasn't messed up. And the other thing to bear in mind also is that reward and punishment isn't necessarily what it seems. And this, I think, goes back to what Laura was saying at the beginning, right? God forbid someone's in a coma, they have everything done for them, right? They get fed, they get whatever they need, they get done, right? In the physical world, the more helpless a person is, the more help we give them, right? Someone who's strong is going to do the same thing, do everything for themselves, right? The same thing is with us spiritually. When a person is spiritually strong, then God it looks as though God withdraws, right? So that the person can do more on their own, right? And we have to understand again, and it's I think what your dad said is that God gives us ultimately what we need for our ultimate good, and we have to know that then we have choice in how we handle those things. And again, success means that we keep on trying, and our life, we receive the just deserts of our actions, right? Our life in the next world is what we create it to be. And I'll give you this analogy. You may have heard it before, so apologies if you have, but there was a person who wanted to see what's the world to come like. So they took him on a tour of Gehenna, right? Hell. You may know this. Yes, you know the story. Everyone here knows it?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. So he walks in and he sees this beautiful table, like stunning crystal and delicious in hell, right? Delicious smelling food, and it just looks absolutely beautiful. And he walks around and he sees that the people look completely miserable, and he looks further and he's like, oh, I understand, right? They have the cutlery that they have is so long that they can't pick the food up and put it into their mouth, right? It's too long. And so they're sitting here at this delicious banquet and they can't access any of it because the fork is too long. So he's like, okay, I understand what's going on here and why this is Gehenna, this is hell. So now they said, okay, now we'll take you on a tour of Gan Eden, of heaven. So they take him into a room and he takes a double take because the room looks very, very similar. The food, again, the table is set with this stunning crystal stuff and the aroma of the food is delicious. And he looks around and he sees everyone is happy and talking and chatting and enjoying. He's like, I know what the difference between heaven and hell is that it must be that in heaven, they have normal cutlery. He looks again and he's like, no, they also have the same long forks and knives. But what were they doing? They were feeding each other across the table.
Oh.
And he said, and what's the point of the story is that in this world, we're put into this world as takers. And our job in this world is to become givers. And why were the people in hell not able to feed each other? Is because in this world, they had never developed the ability to give to someone else, right? So they couldn't give in the next world. They couldn't give to the other people. The people that went to heaven, they in this world had made themselves into givers. Okay, so it was natural for them. It was natural for them to start giving to the other things. But the point of the story is that our experience in the next world is a direct result of what we create in this world. We create our own reality. And that's what it means when it says that God rewards those who keep his commandments and punishes those who violate his commandments. Even the punishments, ultimately God wants to reward us, right? That's what God's created us. He wants to give us rewards. And even the punishments that he gives us is there to redirect us so that we can ultimately enjoy the rewards in the next world. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. I'd love to hear your feedback, and if you enjoyed this episode, you'll love my book, Living Beautifully, How to Bring Meaning, Joy, and Love into Your Life, based on the timeless wisdom of Pirkei Avot. And please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss out. Have a wonderful day.